We have called you the PocketSmith super user. What is your number one hack?
Getting your category structure right, because that's going to drive your reporting.
Do you think to have a successful budget, you need to be tracking every dollar?
I think ideally, yes. The barefoot investor is something that we sort of followed initially, and I do call it the barefoot date night in the calendar.
Great.
There's not a lot of wine being drunk, I must admit, during those meetings. But
not in the budget, or just not wine drinkers? What would you say is the superpower of PocketSmith?
Hi, I'm Owen, the host of the Australian Finance Podcast. This podcast is proudly sponsored by BetaShares, one of the leading providers of ETFs here in Australia. Serving thousands of financial advisors and over 1 million investors, BetaShares manages tens of billions of dollars on behalf of investors right across the country. I'm proud to partner with BetaShares on the Australian Finance Podcast, Australia's premier financial podcast, because there is great alignment in the long-term philosophy shared by both businesses. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast.
Welcome to this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast. Today, I'm very excited to have somebody a little bit different on the show, someone we haven't had before, but somebody who's actually not an expert. We've got an everyday user of PocketSmith. So I wanted to do an episode with somebody who is actually what I would call a super user of PocketSmith. Very excited to have you on the show, Andrew. Welcome.
Thanks, Gemma. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so Andrew is a long-time listener of the show, and we've wanted to do something a little bit different for a while. So those who follow the show know that PocketSmith is one of our major sponsors. We've worked with them for a very long time. We love them. We've had them on the show a lot, but we haven't actually had somebody who doesn't work for them, is not paid by them, is not being paid by us, and just to talk about like how they use it. And I love like talking to the community. We get questions from the community on a Friday just about how they use different tools and stuff. So I thought it'd be really fun to actually have somebody tell us about their experience with it. And I wanted to kind of convey that it's way more than a budgeting tool, and that there's some pretty cool stuff on it that we probably haven't talked about on the show before. So thank you so much for your time today, Andrew. But before we get into it, we probably should tell the community, or whatever you're comfortable with, about who you are. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm married. I've got two kids, 17 and 15 years old. I'm originally from Sydney, but have been in Melbourne since 2010. From a work perspective, I've got a commerce accounting degree in my background, but my career has primarily been in finance systems implementation and consulting. I've currently worked for a large US software vendor, software as a service business. So we do HCM and finance cloud-based systems. But during my career, I've implemented point of sale systems, inventory, procurement, expense management, and finance systems.
Yes, amazing. Okay, so in saying that, you've got a big background in software and different things. Do you think you need to be all over that to be using software like this?
No, but it certainly helped having that background.
And probably that passion for it. That's probably why you're like the super user of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was... I've been using it for about 3 years now, but prior to that, it was all spreadsheet based. Mm-hmm. So, and actually, as I was sort of preparing for today, I went back and I've got all my budget spreadsheets back to about 2005, I think, and so I've been on spreadsheets for a long time, and it was through listening to Rask and hearing about PocketSmith that I sort of got interested in making that jump from a spreadsheet to an application.
Yes, I was actually going to ask that because I was the same. Like, I'm still very much a spreadsheet person for everything in my life. Like, I'm lists on lists and spreadsheets on spreadsheets. But since I've been with Rask since maybe 8 months now. So I am now converted as well. But I do love a good spreadsheet, and this has really taken it up a level. But I wanted to kind of so the point of today's episode is to dive into it's way more than just a budgeting tool. So we'll definitely get into that. But tell me a little bit about, I guess, so you heard about it about 3 years ago. How has that journey kind of evolved? Were you using it just as a basic kind of budgeting spreadsheet, kind of just to replace that at the time? Or how do you use it in your day-to-day finances at the moment? Because I find that people think that budgeting is really, really boring, but I think that there's so much that you can do on here that we don't really understand. So I'm excited to get into all the hacks in a little bit. But how was that kind of changeover from using a spreadsheet to how you kind of manage things initially in that first changeover?
Yeah, so how I've used it has evolved over time. And I think I'd say probably for the first couple of years, I was using it more as a spend tracker, so I've got 3 full years of transaction data in there now, but I would say it's only in the last year that I've really started to utilize, the full functionality of the product, right? So, that's implementing budgets and then using those budgets for your cash flow reporting and net worth reporting as well. So, definitely sort of evolved over that period.
Yeah, that net wealth part is so important. And even if people aren't going to use PocketSmith, or they're not going to use an app or whatever, I think that tracking your net wealth or your net worth, whatever you want to call it, even if it's a spreadsheet, even if it's a napkin or a piece of paper on the fridge, whatever, I think you should be doing that at least once a year, because I see so many people get fixated on one area of their finances, and it might be like their bank account, or maybe they've started investing and it's a little share fund or something, and they're just fixated on that it's not moving, or maybe it's going backwards, or, the home loan's not moving. But if you're actually tracking that whole pie, everything together, you can see that progress is actually happening. So whether it's on an app, it might be a banking app, it might be something like this, it might be a spreadsheet like we were years ago. I think it's a really, really healthy thing to do at least once a year. So if you're listening and you're not doing that, I would highly recommend that is something that you do in some form.
And I guess just to add to that, I think once you have gone through the process of getting this set up, it kind of looks after itself, right? So, you've got the bank feed set up and your transactions are coming in. You've set up, your various assets and loans and all that. It pretty much takes care of itself, apart from, maybe updating some of those sort of balances like super accounts on a periodic basis, just to reflect the latest value of those.
Yeah. So that was actually going to be one of my questions. So that's a great segue. How, for you to kind of master something like this, because I think people get really fixated on, is it going to be a lot of work? Well, it's kind of like me at the gym. I go all in for a week or two and then go, oh, stuff it, I'm not going to go anymore. If you spend all this time setting up an app or something, or a great spreadsheet, or whatever the way you decide you're going to manage your money, how much time do you think you need to then spend going forwards managing and keeping it on track? How much time would you spend a week managing your finances to keep something like this running smoothly?
So, I would say now I probably get into PocketSmith once a week, as categorize any transactions that haven't been captured by the automated categorization rules. So 15 minutes a week just for a bit of maintenance.
Yeah.
And then once a month I'll be in there, having a look at my, income and expense report, and other reports as well, some of the dashboards that I've got set up. And then, probably a couple of times a year, normally say beginning of the calendar year, beginning of the financial year, having a look at budgets and reviewing those. So there's obviously a bit more work there, but on a weekly basis, 15 to 20 minutes a week just to do a bit of admin.
Yeah. And I guess you're a little bit more engaged with it as well. And if it's all set up that it's easy to do, it's kind of a task that is a lot less daunting than if you're starting from scratch every time.
Yeah. But look, there is a bit of work to get it set up initially, but get your bank feeds set up, your category structures in place, and so I think to take it on, you sort of got to break it down a little bit, and sort of I think for the first part, it really is focusing on the bank feeds, the categories, and some of the category rules to automate the transactions being categorized. Once you've kind of got comfortable with that, then you sort of that the next step I think is to then start looking at budgets and other reports.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like anything, I guess. If you try to go from 0 to 100, it's going to be really overwhelming. But like it's got so many tools and different stuff in it that if you actually just let it evolve over time, it's going to be a lot more organic and you're going to just learn as you go. It's kind of like investing and stuff. People think that they need to be the next Warren Buffett or it's not worth even trying. And I'm like, just try. Small steps makes a big impact. Yeah, okay, perfect. So your journey with them have really, really been evolving. And I guess what I was saying is, it is more than a budget tool. So you were using it initially for a lot of spend tracking. Do you think, and I always love to get people's opinion on this, do you think to have a successful budget, you need to be tracking every dollar? Oh. This puts you on the spot a bit because I didn't have this in the pre-questions.
Look, I think ideally, yes. And you can do that with this, providing, you set up all your bank accounts. If you've got a lot of cash expenses, so if you're someone that's still withdrawing cash out of the bank, that's a bit harder to capture all those expenses because you're not getting the benefit of the automated transactions coming through. But it's not something I've thought of not capturing all transactions in there, just because I think like for me, the majority of our spend is coming out of bank accounts, so it's easy enough to capture it in PocketSmith with the bank feed set up.
Yeah, I think it's just the way most people's banking is, like day-to-day cash flow is set up, right? It's pretty rare that we have cash. Like the days that I do a marketplace bargain pickup and they're like cash, I'm like, where is even an ATM to go to? It's
I had that
really
very
annoying.
experience yesterday.
Yeah.
And finding an ATM that only dispenses $100 notes, it's really useful.
Yeah, it's pretty frustrating. But yes, I think most of it, and even like banking apps and things now. So for people that are thinking, how do I categorize my expenses? A lot of our banking apps are doing it for us anyway. Like, so I've got most of my banking with CBA from my old Dolomite days. Sucked into that program. If I go on the app, it's categorizing everything for me anyway, regardless if I want it or not. So there's insights kind of happening for us anyway. And then you can really dive down a lot deeper. You can set up your own categories. You can set up automations. I was very in the thick of the weeds in it the other day when I was setting up all of my stuff with it as well, which is pretty cool. But so it's got tools, it's got insights, it's got forecasting, which is pretty cool as well. What do you think has been the most surprising thing when you've started like tracking your expenses, if anything? But like, has there been anything that's been really surprising when you started tracking your expenses this kind of way?
Look, there wasn't any real surprises, from a budget or money perspective, because we've been tracking, using spreadsheets for budgeting for a while. I think what was the most interesting thing around it was, getting my wife on board with this. So she's more big picture. I'm the detail person. So I'm the household CFO. You might say she's the CEO. She just wants the big
Love that.
picture,
Yeah.
story. So, and so because I am detailed, I would go through and categorize all these transactions that were coming in. And so I'd sort of, hey, what's this transaction here? What was that for? And it's like, oh, reaction.
Yes.
That was probably the maybe I shouldn't have been surprised by that, but it was that was the challenge there, and it wasn't honestly wasn't coming from a place of what have you spending, what's that spend there for? It's just really I'm trying to capture it all accurately.
Yes.
So that's been sort of an interesting part of the journey, and probably one I underestimated.
Yeah, I love that you've got some understanding of how that works for both of you, because we see that so often with couples, and one person can get really defensive and it can come off very differently. Like, it can feel very differently. Both people are coming from a very different place. One's trying to understand, one's getting defensive, and sometimes it's actually a reflection of, well, actually both times it's a reflection of your money story and your values and different things. But communication is key. I love that you've described it as a CEO and a CFO, because we see that in both. I'm totally going to steal that. We do definitely see it in both. And I often say to people is you can outsource the execution of your money, but not the understanding. So like one person like you are can do the boring day-to-day stuff. Sounds like you actually really enjoy it, but categorizing the expenses and all that kind of stuff, like you both don't need to be doing that and paying the bills, but you both need to understand, what do we spend our money on? Where does it go? What assets do we have? Why do we make these decisions? But you don't both have to be involved in the day-to-day stuff. The person that enjoys that can absolutely do it. But yeah, one should be the CEO and one should be the CFO. Absolutely love that. So on that, how often would you and your wife, if you feel comfortable telling us, would you sit down and talk about money and have these kind of CFO, CEO kind of meetings? I think the Barefoot Investor, what does he say? Date night once a month, or does he say?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Would you guys do something like that, or is it more just when things come up? What's the secret sauce?
It's a bit of both. Definitely. The Barefoot Investor was something that we sort of followed initially, and so I do call it the Barefoot Date Night in the calendar.
Great.
There's not a lot of wine being drunk, I must admit, during those meetings, but
not in the budget, or just not wine drinkers.
Well, there's a little bit of wine in the budget, but mainly me. Yeah, so once a month we try to sit down and just go through, like I said, there's the income and expense report. So have a look at that, how we sort of tracked last month, and then sort of take a look ahead at the forecasting and net worth, and other dashboards that I've set up, that sort of look at our super, and we've got a couple of investment properties, so sort of tracking those, and so once a month reviewing is probably the main sort of rhythm that we have.
Yeah, great. And that leads in perfectly to that concept that it is way more than just a budget, right? You can forecast how these things are happening. So like with our I guess podcast, like listener community, we do have very much a DIY kind of community where they might not necessarily engage a financial advisor, and they're always looking for like software where they can do different things, and they might be, a FIRE community, financial independence, retire early, and they're very, always looking for calculators and different things. But this is essentially financial planning software where you can model out different scenarios and things and track different things, which is probably the main reason that I was keen for it as well. I'm not so much a track your spend. I'm kind of like, once it's done, it's done. I like to know what I forecast what I'll spend, but the forecasting, like net wealth to me is like game changer. That's what I like to do, and like plug different things and play around with that. With that, do you think like that changes your habits day to day with where you spend money, knowing where like the forecast is with your wealth? Like, is that a big motivator for you, or do you think you already had those habits? It sounds like you've always kind of been pretty good with money.
Yeah, I think we're all already pretty good with that. So that's probably not sort of, it's not something that we've used really to sort of like zero in on, certain areas of spend to sort of really, track those. Talking about the barefoot investor, we did use that sort of, we had splurge accounts set up. We had a splurge card each, and we were, transferring money into that. But in the end, we found we're actually we weren't spending all that money. So it's sort of, we ended up sort of doing away with those. It just seemed to be a little bit unnecessary. So, it's something I think we've sort of been on top of most of the way.
That's a really important point. Like, you can do something and you can try it and then let it evolve. So you can go, does this work for us? How can we tweak it? Do we need to let it, change as things adapt? Because I find that people will hear something like the Barefoot Investor's Way and then try it. And then if it doesn't work for them, they'll either think we have to stick with this, or they're not good with money. And, but you can just try things. And if it doesn't work for you, you can tweak it. You can try different avenues and just kind of, keep trying different things until you find what absolutely works with you.
But yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've got a friend who's setting it up at the moment, and I've been helping them with that. And, they've got your different accounts set up. And I've heard you speak about this before, like bills accounts and school fee accounts and the like, and discretionary accounts. And, we haven't done that. And part of the barrier for that has also been, the cost of those accounts. Like, I'm also with CBA, and those accounts end up, unless you've got minimum spend going through them.
Yes, they can have an account
some
fee.
Account fees, right?
Yeah.
So
some months I see that that $4 fee on there.
That's right. Yeah. So I'd be interested to set something like that up, but that's probably been the blocker for me on that. I'm a tight ass.
Well, it sounds like it's working for you. I kind of go, I go both ways when it comes to banking. So it really depends. And I'm a big advocate for finding what works for you. But I am at a stage where I'm like, transparency is really important. So having different accounts that do different jobs so you can clearly see what that money is for, I think is working for most clients that I work with and most people that I speak to. So having, a bills hub and a separate savings account and different things that transparency, that is definitely money for that. And you can't dip into that unless it's for that job. One of the biggest things that I see trip people up with budgets and spending and stuff is they can have the best budget in the world, the best spreadsheet or whatever, looks great on paper, but potentially they're using one offset account, which, yes, is a great strategy to save interest on their non-tax deductible home loan. But in the everyday world of just tapping here and having variable expenses and things, it's really hard to track if you've overspent and to actually have that transparency. And so in actual life, it can actually mean that you're going backwards, even though it looks like a good habit to have and save interest and have it all in one account. It can play out very differently. Just like it can seem, like I say, have multiple bank accounts, but if you're paying multiple fees on these, it can seem like a good thing on paper, but in reality. So it's just about finding that balance. But maybe you go to a bank that doesn't charge you extra fees, or maybe, when I was I used to have all my home loans with CBA, so I wouldn't be charged the fees. And now I've refinanced, and that's why I'm seeing the fees pop up. And I'm like, oh, damn, time to find a new bank for the accounts.
And look, I know that, I know some of the banks do offer those off. You can set those accounts up as offset accounts, and that's, so where with our loans are with a different bank, and there's only the one offset account. So we're in that camp of having just the one offset. So I hear what you're saying. Yeah, there it would be interesting to be able to set that sort of structure up.
Mm.
But
Some people can make it work, like the one offset account. I know plenty of people that can work from one bank account and make it work seamlessly. It's like these people that can make credit card points work. I absolutely cannot, because my spending habits change when I have a credit card. I go nuts and it's not worth the points. But some people can actually make credit card points work. I just see the majority of people not. It's just like it's just like offset accounts. If you can only have one, I see most people kind of struggle with it, but that doesn't mean that everybody does. It's about knowing how your daily habits and things are impacted by the systems that you have, and then working the system to your lifestyle. It's no one size fits all. And that's where I love that with like an app like this, if you're using an online app, whether it's your banking app, whether it's PocketSmith or whatever, if you have that personalization that you can actually go and set, like I think you mentioned dashboards before where you can like set up different things. You need systems that can actually support how you run your own life. So yeah, anything that you can do that sets up to be around your own life, I think, and how you're actually going to manage it is really, really important. Yeah. It's going to help you stick with it.
I think just to pick up on one of the things you mentioned there with the banks having apps that do some of this stuff. The beauty, I think, of PocketSmith is that, as I mentioned, main bank is CBA, but loans with Westpac. This allows you to bring it all into the one place, right?
Yes.
Whereas, I think, I don't know, but I reckon most people have probably got accounts with different institutions these days, right?
Because we
shop around for the best rate, and we move, loans to another bank. And so, it becomes hard to get that consolidated view of everything. And that's what I think what PocketSmith does really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you can add all those extras that you're adding, forecasting and all of that stuff. But yeah, I think that, bringing it all into one place and having the personalization lens over it, that's, huge, huge benefit. So Andrew, we have called you the PocketSmith super user, so feel free to trademark that if you like. I hope PocketSmith are okay with this term. But tell us, what is your number one hack? Like, so now you've been using it for like 3 years. You're helping a friend do it. You've given me some tips for it for my own. But what's your number one hack?
So, getting your category structure right is, I think, a really important sort of first step. So, what are the categories you're going to use and to assign to your transactions? Because that's going to, drive your reporting. I had a look at the Money Smart budget planner as a starting point, and sort of took their sort of category, their hierarchy, and categories from there. I think I've had a look on the Rask education website. You've got some budget templates there, so I think that's another good place to have a look. But getting that right and getting a structure or a hierarchy around it. So, your food spending, your transport expenses, housing expenses, and grouping all those things together so that you can then, get some good insights and I guess get some nice reporting out of the system.
Yeah. Do you set them up before you connect all your bank things? I'm just trying to remember when I did it, because you told me a hack around that as well that was going to make my life easier, and now I can't remember. It was a little while ago.
So you can set them up beforehand, but the bank feeds will also
automate a little bit,
or automate some of that categorization, right? So you can certainly use the bank feed categorization as a starting point, but I think what you also want to be looking at is how do you sort of then group those different sort of types of transactions together. All right, so so that you can sort of get some, I guess, what's the cost to run the house? What I've got categories around investments. So what's the expenses around investments? and so that I can sort of see, what how each of those areas is kind of tracking.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip, because a lot of the time when I see people's budgets, whether it's on, spreadsheet or whatever, they have grouped things together, but then it doesn't really reflect how they're grouped in bank accounts. Like, so for example, they might have on their spreadsheet, all their housing expenses. But then when we look at, well, where are those direct debits coming from? Some are coming from one account, some are coming from the other. And they're going, oh, it's really difficult. I have to constantly move money from the other. And it feels like I'm, what's that saying, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And it's like, well, if you've got categories in your budget, they should reflect, like, just to make things easier, make sure they're grouped the same way, that they reflect the same accounts and different things like that, just to make your life much easier, that you can just quickly look at, an app like this or your budget, whatever, and they're grouped into relevant, categories. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think then, like, on top of that, then it's really, once you've landed on that, is to focus on the categorization rules, and so you're automating as much of the categorization, because the people that I've spoken to that have either used PocketSmith or my friend that's sort of helping to get set up on it, that is it is a little bit of a blocker. I think it's that idea that they're going to be in there having to be categorizing all their transactions on a daily basis or something, right? So that's, once you've got the structure there, I think the next step is to get that automation happening, because that's I guess the other sort of real benefit here is to get that happening behind the scenes, so that you're not spending that time every day managing that.
And that's going to be a snowball, right? Like, the more you do it and consistently you do it, the less down the track you're going to do. Like you were saying, you're down to like 15 minutes a week. But I guess it's like anything, you're going to have to invest a little bit of time initially to get it set up right, and then it's going to pay dividends.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Investing pun. Perfect. So for people that haven't done a budget and are feeling like completely overwhelmed, whether you're going to be using something like this, you mentioned Money Smart before. You mentioned that Rask has got resources. One of my tips for people that have never done a budget before is to find something like that, because it's really handy to see other budgets, just to get a bit of a reminder of, like, categories that you might have forgotten that are in your budget, that maybe they haven't come up for 12 months. And so it might not, or maybe they haven't come up in this bank account or whatever. So if you've got what you think is your budget, but then if you're looking through some other templates, just to go, oh yeah, I forgot that's mine, or I've set that up but I haven't had a payment, or whatever. I think that's really good, just to cross-reference, cross-check that maybe there's some things that you have forgotten that are on your list.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when you set up PocketSmith, you can bring, I think, up to 2 years of bank transactions in.
Oh, great. And they do closed accounts too, don't they?
No, I think, I'm not sure. I think you can, if you've still got access to the account. Yeah,
it came through on my my CBA closed ones went through.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not suggesting that you should bring in 2 years. It's a lot, but definitely if you can do 12 months, I think there's a lot of benefit there, right? Because as you said, there's those one-off yearly expenses that you're going to get oversight of, and I think the other benefit there is that when you're setting up budgets, like, it's got an auto budgeting tool, so if you've got 12 months of data, it's able to kind of look at that and then sort of automatically create those budgets for you, so that sort of takes a little bit of pressure off having to set those up manually.
Yeah, great. So being a super user, if you had to sum it up, what would you say is the superpower of PocketSmith, in your opinion?
So I would say it's like having a flux capacitor for your money. So I don't know if you've seen Back to the Future, but the flux capacitor was the thing that made the DeLorean able to travel through time. And I know if you've ever heard Jason from PocketSmith talk about it, he talks about it being a time machine for your money. And I think, that's where, it gives you that ability to look into the future. So, and to sort of give you, I guess, a story where that was relevant for us is, last year we had just done a family holiday to Greece. We're away for 5 weeks, had an amazing trip over there, got back, and first day back at work, my wife was made redundant, which was a little bit of a surprise. It was a bit unexpected. But, obviously, one of the first things you sort of worried about is, what does that mean from a financial perspective? But, having a tool like this, it was quite easy to, we were set up with it was easy to sort of go and have a look at, update the budget, sort of take her income out for a sort of let's say 6-month period, do some sort of scenario modeling and what did our numbers sort of look like and how we were going to manage that. And so,
wow, that would have taken so much stress out of that situation to have it like
absolutely
all ready to just go, quick, okay, let's pull that out. Let's see what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, like it's a stressful time, obviously, right? And, just being able to sort of, I guess, look at that aspect of it and go, okay, no, that's okay. We're all right. And sort of then go, okay, well, let's sort of focus on the next thing here. What's the next role?
Yeah, because there's that's a financial thing, obviously, for that. But there's also emotional and there's other elements of losing your job. Yeah,
absolutely.
Very, very stressful time. Okay, perfect. And I talked about it being more than just a budgeting tool. So what would you say to that?
I mean, look, I think that point alone highlights that it's more than just a budgeting tool, right? That's I think a real sort of real life example of how it's more than just a spend tracker.
I talk a lot about like your sleep at night test, and that there is like worth every penny, right? That you can just go, how does this look quickly, really easily, and go, okay, we can sleep at night tonight, and then we can deal with the job hunt or whatever in however many months, you can work out a bit of a runway and different things.
Correct. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, one question I have, which is also going to put you on the spot. I'm just thinking, so I went through like a divorce separation a few years ago, and I'm just thinking for people in similar situations, if you're going to upload like past expenses, but you're now in a very different financial position. So I moved out, was in a rental, grocery bill changed, content, pretty much every expense changed. Not one single thing stayed the same. What would you do there? Would you still maybe upload and then you could edit like your projections, or just start fresh and map out a budget? You're like, I'm not the BDM. I'm telling you about how I use it. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, no, that's a good question.
I can ask PocketSmith this.
How would I approach that? I think I would. I mean, that's going to give you some sort of an indication, I guess. Yeah. You're going to have some new, obviously, some new categories that you're spending.
Yeah. Don't know.
Not sure.
When we get PocketSmith on next, I'll ask them. But
okay.
that's one of the things. Like, so sometimes, so we're talking about, like the value of getting all of this data in. But yes, sometimes when I'm talking to people about budgets, I go, maybe we just draw a line in the sand and we project going forwards and we don't look at previous. And I guess that's just one thing that you go, find what works for you. And maybe that data isn't relevant, but you could use lots of the other things in there. But yeah, that's an interesting thing that we kind of have a look into and see, there's still going to be lots of tools and insights. But yeah, that's one case where I kind of go, oh, let's throw out what's happened in the past and start fresh. But yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So to wrap up, let me ask you 2 final questions. I would love to talk about budget myths. So people get the ick when they hear the word budget, hopefully after listening to you talk about it and how easy it can be. But yeah, what do you think people need to let go of when they think about budgets?
I mean, I think it's the immediate sort of view is that it's something that's restrictive or stopping you from doing things, and I think too that like budgets are maybe seen as being for people who are bad with money, and I think it's really about being in control of your money and having a plan for it, right? So, and I think this is where PocketSmith it's sort of brings this to life, right? Because without a budget in the tool, it is really just a spending tracker, right? So once you get your budgets in there, that's when it really comes to life, and you've got the cash flow reporting, the net worth reporting, right? So it's the sort of the key to opening up that sort of those really interesting insights.
Yeah, 100% agree. Like a budget is literally a plan for your money. And if you have a clear plan on it, your budget could be spending 50 grand a year on travel. Like it doesn't have to be restrictive at all. It could be a big budget. And then if you're forecasting what your wealth is going to grow to, then that tells you what your budget's going to be in the future for travel and all of those exciting things. So absolutely agree with your myth busting. And finally, to wrap up, I always like to ask people what they wish they knew about money when they were 20. What insights do you wish you knew about money?
Like I was reflecting back on my 20s when preparing for this, and I was working pretty hard and saving money at the time. I know I was looking into investment property at the time, still living at home, and I was on my way to buying an investment property, and in the end I quit my job and went traveling in Europe and spent my money there. So I do wish I had gone through with the investment property at the time, perhaps, but it was a great experience, obviously, doing that trip. The one thing I wish that there was the financial education that is out there now. Had that have been around in my 20s, that would have been amazing, right? Because not to say that there wasn't anything there, but it's just so accessible now, and so. I think this is something like not just from a finance perspective, but this is something even with my kids that I look at. They consume so much online these days, whether it be whatever their interest is, music or sport, and they learn so much from that. And it's going to be interesting to see how that changes that generation, like as they grow older. So I think that you're going to see. Sort of a really different sort of outcome because of that, and so definitely some access to this kind of education would have been fantastic in my 20s.
Yes, I absolutely agree, and I think it goes. There's good and bad, right? Because we're like bombarded with financial education. It can be like, where do we look and what should we be doing? But then it is, never been an easier time to learn, actually get into investing, build wealth, all of that kind of stuff. Yes, there are some challenges, but it's also never been an easier time to kind of do those kind of things. So, well, thank you so much for spending the time to go through and diving into your personal situation and your journey with it. And you've given us some really, really good insights. And I know you're not a money coach or a financial advisor, but you've talked to us about your financial journey and how you make this work, PocketSmith, as a super user, but also just we've talked about general banking and all of these different things. So I think the community, our listeners, will get a lot out of this. So thank you so much for sharing. I've really loved chatting to you today.
No, thanks, Gemma. Thank you for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you want to hear more from us, you can get daily videos and podcasts on Rask's YouTube channel, or if you want to enroll in a free course on investing, property, business, money, you name it, you can join over 34,000 other students and enroll in a free course on the Rask website. Simply head to www.rask.com.au and follow the prompts. Thanks for watching this Rask podcast.